There are 3 branches of the optic nerve. 2 of those branches that leave the vision cortex, they come right to the eyes. The middle branch sits in the very center of your brain, sits just over the temporal lobe. That place, when that becomes energized, we begin to see other spectrums. Bring energy into the vision, into the optic nerve, and you start to see. It starts usually with the charged particles around living. It's easier around people, though I know a lot of people see it around plants and sometimes minerals, and begin to emit a magnetic field, and actually an electrical field too. And it starts to go around. You look at the person, you see the colors around them, or we call it the aura, right, around the person, and that's where it starts. As you start to see this aura, the auras have color and they have layers. I'm told there are 64 layers. The aura, right? You see the 64 layers around a person, layers of energy, and in each layer of energy, it will say something different about the state of this person's body. How's his heart and soul? How are his lungs doing? How's his pancreas? How's everything going? Well, you can see that. As he gets even more subtle, and he takes a look at a person, he begins to see, where does this energy enter the body? How does it come in? And he starts to see marks on the body, right? These marks on the body, it's a shame in English they just call them points. How dull, right? Chinese translation, men, it means a gate. It's an entryway. And you can think of each point of the body as being a sender and a receiver for the vital force. It's a communication between you and the universal flow. And each one of those entryways, each one of those antennas will bring in a vibration that you need. And they mix together and they fuel you. How you feel, how your heart beats, how your kidneys function. How do I express anger? How do I express disappointment? How do I feel love? How do I express joy? All of these things, without the universal flow to make this happen, they can't. Have you ever encountered somebody who seems joyless? You know, something's blocked between them and the universal flow. You know, it's like, well, yeah, I'm really happy. I mean, something that's great. You know. Have you ever met some? I've been like that. You cut off from the joy, right? It's not there. You know it's in there somewhere, but you can't find it. You know? Or other people, you know, like you would almost expect, like, well, doesn't that bother you? Yeah, I'm furious. You know, did you ever meet somebody like that? I'll tell you, I'm beside myself. I'm livid. You know, really? There's something's missing, right? There's an appropriate anger, right? There's plenty of inappropriate anger. Right? You only have to get stuck in traffic to know that. But there's also an appropriate anger. There's a thing that's it's not okay, and I need to draw a line, right? And we may meet people who don't experience that. There's a disconnect. They're not connecting to that universal flow. Somehow those points are not open or functioning. And so these adepts who could see this, right, and look at someone and say, oh, okay. They could see into a body, they could see the organ function, and they could say, oh, see, these organs are not functioning to capacity. And if I follow, oh, see, they're not receiving a signal from out here. They're not receiving the input. Now, many times there are many routes that travel to the same organ in combination. And they start to say, okay, when I see that pattern in the organ, I can see also which places I need to stimulate. If I stimulate that area, it begins to open up the point and they begin to draw in what they need. Or conversely, maybe there's too much in there and we need to let some out. It's built up, right? Have you ever met people who are too joyful? Do you know that? Everything's funny, like, you know, like, and then he died, Like, I actually met, like, somebody would say, have you ever had that experience? Like, okay, that's creepy. You know, you just freaked me out with that, you know, because there's a little too much around the heart. You know, we need to let some of that out. That's inappropriate, right? Not supposed to make jokes at a funeral, right? There's just some things that are not okay, right? We need to release this. This has to go. And so they say, let's open it up. Let's release it and let it flow. And so some of the points would draw in and some would release. And sometimes if there was too much concentration in the heart, you start to notice there's not enough someplace else. Maybe the kidneys need a little extra. Let's divert what was in the heart and bring it to the kidneys. And they understood this pattern very well. And so what happened in this tradition was they started to write it down. As you start to write it down, we have the discipline of acupuncture, right? Now you can't hold, how many points can you hold, right? You only have so many hands or so many friends to hold the points with you, right? So we start with slivers of bone from animals, right? Take a sliver of bone and we just put that on the point and it keeps the point open and activated. Now later on, you start to notice that, for example, bone actually contains with it quite a bit of energy or power. And this is why they started to use bones. Bones will actually store, the marrow of a bone will actually store the record of either a human being's life or an animal's life. This is why in a lot of the Buddhist traditions especially, when a monk dies, they usually let the body decompose and keep the bones in the temple. And then when you ring the bell, the vibration permeates the marrow and the wisdom is supposed to reach people. This is the power. So they started with bone. And then later they started to notice that if you wanted something, because not all experience is a good experience, right? Everything's stored in the marrow. Maybe we don't want to experience everything, right? Well, what's pure? You know, start to look at minerals, right? And the first thing, jade has a fantastic vibration. So you would take a sliver of jade, and then the needles became jade. Jade's rare, it's kind of expensive, it's hard to shape, and it also breaks off. So we have to move to something else, right? And so the two metals that were used most often was gold needles were used to draw energy in, silver needles were used to release it. Today we have stainless steel. It's a little bit boring. It's a neutral stimulus. But this is where Chinese medicine comes from. This is how they get it, right? Not like they told us in acupuncture school. You know, in acupuncture school they said it was from battle wounds, which is absurd. You know, you can't see somebody with an arrow wound saying like, you know, my asthma is really starting to clear up. You know, it's highly unlikely, right? That's going to happen. You're not going to notice the subtle when you've got an axe sticking out of your, you know, it's like, yeah, I think my blood pressure's getting better, you know, it's definitely going down. You know, these things don't make sense, right? It couldn't be from wounds. It comes from a rich and varied history. The very first writings in China, going back almost 7,000 years, they're hieroglyphic writings, talk about how to cultivate the qi.